Hello, my name is Parker.
And my name is Ned.
And this is The Force Unlimited, yet another Star Wars Unlimited podcast. This is episode number 41. We're recording on October 24th, and to the best of my knowledge, Baton has not been offered the chance to make a Star Wars Unlimited card.
Boo!
Let's not get too hostile. Now.
Okay, all right.
You know, it's possible he's in the middle of designing it as we speak. I just haven't, we haven't heard about it. So we're just gonna, I keep banging that drum just every 2 weeks until he does, or we give up. As always, dear listener, we start off playing a match, and tonight we played a trilogy match. Ned, tell me about the trilogy match we just played.
It was I brought the 3 trilogy decks that I brought to Galactics, which were Rex Unity of Purpose, Talzin Red, and Boba 4 Yellow. Parker changed things up a little bit, where you brought Boba 4 Data Vault, Han 2 Blue, and then Vader. That Vader was the same. The Vader Yellow. Yeah.
And the Han 2 Blue. I had 2 decks returning. I brought, unlike you, Ned, I brought a lot of decks to Galactics. So, no, I tried out the Boba. I wanted to try out the Boba 4 Data Vault. I did not get to try out the Boba 4.
I'm sorry.
I banned. So I banned Mother Talzin because I'm just kind of over that deck right now. No, it was a rough 0-2 for me. I think the first one, you put Vader on the back foot. If Vader doesn't get the engine going, I mean that can be a good game. But I'm gonna save most of my observations about Vader for Data Vault until a little bit later in the episode. And then the second matchup, I think you just outplayed me.
I was thinking about taking Boba 4 Yellow to Galactics. In the end, I decided not to. That may have been a mistake, at least for me. But it's a deck I'm quite familiar with, and it's in that kind of aggro control space that I love.
I considered taking Han 2 Force to Galactics, and I took it to Las Vegas. I do not have as many lines with that deck. I was considering it, but I don't have as many lines with the Force version, which is the modern version. That was my main deck in Shadows. So I was considering pivoting, but I just felt like the Galactics field would be too wide. No, I got out. That one I just got straight out played. That one was just that was a pure skill. So, dear listener, I promised last episode one more anecdote from Galactics, and in fact something that's going to kind of spin off an entire episode. This is going to be our third episode where we talk about the trilogy format, and in fact, I think this was going to be an episode in threes. I was optimistic and hopeful we were going to have a guest this episode, but tune in 2 weeks for that bit, because this is going to be an episode of threes. We got to stop counting trilogy decks or as a topic, though, because this is now a trilogy podcast. I am post Galactics. We now have, in the rule of threes, we now have a third brand. Brands 1 and 2 are Ned Math and Mildly Interesting Things, and the third pillar of our podcast is Trilogy. I am all in on the format. I came back from Galactic. I was pretty pumped about Trilogy format before we went. I was optimistic. Having spent an entire weekend playing a lot of Trilogy, I am all in on the format. But there are notes and thoughts. But my anecdote, the specific anecdote, so I played in the Friday Trilogy event. Oh, sorry, to the person who always asks, this is a Pelican Brewing, Welcome to the State of Excitement. This is a charity beer. 100% of the profits go to developing more craft brews in Oregon, because
we need more of that. Obviously,
we need more of that. Yes, brought to you by the 25 different craft brews listed on the side of the can. Here's a charity beer to help us develop more. If you have a bar in your town that serves the same 5 beers year round, come to Oregon. It's delightful. I sometimes can't get the beer that I liked a month ago again. That's a regular. Anyways, so Friday played the Twin Suns event. They had 2 Twin Suns. Tournament is a strong word. It was phrased as a tournament, but just infinite. It was just 6 rounds of Swiss. Every win got you 200 prize ball tickets, but nobody got kicked out. You just kept playing all 6 rounds, and you just kept having shots. And if you lost, you just played against progressively worse players. And my match 5, I almost feel bad. People had brought obviously some Django, some Boba, some Han and DJ. Not a shock. And if you sat down against somebody who was bringing that and you didn't want to play it, you banned it. That was fine. It's a competitive event. Ostensibly, there are prize wall tickets. But again, if you lost and you just brought your weird jank, you got to keep playing. And you got to keep attempting to win. But so people brought it. One of my matches, somebody brought Han 2 DJ, and I had to play against it because I knew I just had nothing going up against Vader 4 in yellow. I knew I didn't have any answers for a go wide deck in any of my trilogy, and so I had to get rid of that deck and just try to deal with the Han 2. And I took Han 2 DJ down. That was fine. But match 5, I sit down from a guy and he opens his box, and it was Django, Han 2 DJ or Han 1 DJ and Boba, and I scooped. I just said nope, and I just stood up and I shook his hand and I said congratulations on your 200 tickets, and I walked away. I had so many better things to do with that 50 minutes than play that matchup. And I almost felt bad because like the guy didn't do anything wrong. Like,
no,
I mean, it was a competitive event. Prize ball tickets, which were not super easy to come by, were on the line. The cards that came out of the prize ball were worth money. Like, we are powerful advocates of not having a scrub mentality here, despite the fact that we both went 0-3 at Galactics.
There's a difference between losing and having a scrub mentality, Parker.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
right. Yes. So no shame on the guy who did it. I just didn't want to deal with it. I was like, nope. I am here. I paid a lot of money to come here to Vegas to play games that are fun, and that's just not going to be fun. But overall, I basically talked about Trilogy the entire time I was at Galactics. And I was so excited to get to. I mean, I went through 03 Galactics, the main event, but my eye was on the Trilogy event in the afternoon. I was very excited for that. And I wish I could have done the second day, but some idiot at a panel at 5 o'clock, and I didn't feel like I was going to be able to make it. So.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Parker.
But the thing that really I have so many stories out of there, so many great things. We played the first evening we were there. I had just come out of the event and we got dinner. We ended up playing with Tyler and Justin from the Garbage Rollers, playing tournament decks against them in the
food court.
Turkey and the Wolf.
Yes,
in the food court, just playing right there, which was great. We saw Just Jack and what remains of the Golden Dice podcast over there. They were playing decks. There were a lot of people in there playing decks, and it was just Trilogy was there all night. That was great. But the thing that really kind of blew me away was on that Friday, Ryan Serrano came and sat down mid-event to just talk to people about how were they finding Trilogy. These are people who have packed Trilogy decks to Galactics, which is a choice to bring 3 specific decks. And obviously, if you saw the stats coming out of social media yesterday or the day before, Twin Suns was obviously just a huge winner at Galactics. A lot of Twin Suns games, but to play in this, there was no Trilogy running event. You had those 2 tournaments, and otherwise you were just on your own. And so to bring Trilogy decks to Galactics to play in those 2 events, you had to be pretty, I think, motivated to do so. And so, came by and swung by and asked what people thought. And I think most people were pretty optimistic. But the question obviously came up of what the heck regarding the lack of ban list. And his answer, and I'm going to put all of this in air quotes because...
This is a paraphrase and not a direct quote.
Paraphrase. A paraphrase. Not this is adjacent to a paraphrase. This
Yes.
may be an erroneous paraphrase. It was a loud room on a long weekend, but basically boiled down to there can and will be a ban list for Trilogy, but it's by virtue of being an eternal format, it has a little breathing room. You were there? Were you there?
Yeah, I was there. I overheard this conversation. Yeah.
So there's enough room in the eternal format for them to let things play out, to breathe, to see can the full eternal pool handle.
I mean, given that the eternal pool and the standard pool right now are roughly synonymous, except for the ban list. Yeah, that's that's a choice.
That's actually a point. I disagree. Yes. So I wanted to talk about, Ned. Tell me about how it feels. Tell me about. So Magic has a long and storied history.
Yes.
And standard is still something like what? It's now 3 years, right? So they've made
on that order. Yeah, they've made standard longer. Yeah. So
it's which means it's only like 72 sets, and then you go into other. Man, that didn't even get a rise out of you, Ned. Man, at this point, I've just been.
I am increasingly checked out from Magic. Like the more SWU I play, and the weirder Magic gets, the more checked out I get.
So, so there's standard, and then you have all the way up. What's the oldest one called? Vintage?
There is Legacy and there is Vintage. So rather than trying to like re-encapsulate the entirety of all the Magic formats, because there are a lot of them, I'm going to talk specifically about Legacy, Modern, and Standard, along with kind of Modern cousin Extended. So when Magic started off, there was no concept of rotation. Eventually, it became obvious that a rotation was needed. Something that I do want to slightly address here is that rotation is good and healthy. Like it stinks, but if you've got a deck that you love playing or a particular structure, like style of play that you really enjoy, I am sorry if your favorite deck rotates out of Standard or out of Premier, but
it's been a hot minute. We talked about rotation.
Yeah.
I think rotation is a question of how, not
yes.
If. And let's just, we're done.
Yeah.
I am not interested in entertaining arguments against rotation.
Yeah. Otherwise, the card pool just gets too big. It becomes too hard to you have to either keep everything in print, or the cost to maintain a deck goes up. Especially for new entrants, the cost goes up, and game designers aren't perfect. You want forgetting. You need forgetting of cards, or else,
Sure.
Yeah, every mistake lasts forever. Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about. Yeah,
we can talk about kicking out entire sets, or just good cards, a la Flesh and Blood or whatever.
Yeah,
but you got to get rid of the stuff that's good, that's old.
Yeah.
Anyways. So Magic didn't have rotation. Then
when rotation was introduced, originally there was just what was called Type 1 and Type 2, where Type 1 was what is now Standard, and Type 2 became what is now Legacy. And the idea here is that you have two formats, and these two formats are going to evolve differently. Where Standard is going to be a format that's a little bit lower powered, and as a consequence of being a little lower powered, you get to it's an easier on-ramp for new players, and it's generally the format up until recently that kind of people got their feet wet with. If you learned how to play, you learned how to play in a standard format environment. Whereas Legacy or Vintage were formats that were explicitly for heavily invested players who really enjoyed specific styles of decks. And as the card pool grows, the number of interactions grows. So the number of cards and the number of ways that cards work that you need to keep track of goes up, and the interactions get more complex. But also because the card pool gets bigger, you have more ability to brew. So after a while, they decided that there was a need for a format somewhat between Standard and Legacy, and that was Extended, where Extended was essentially super standard. It was two sets of Standard kind of slammed together, and whenever Standard rotated, then you had the tail end of Extended would fall out, and the new thing would come in. Nobody really liked
That's wild because I've been reading Mark Rosewater's art. I haven't played Magic, but I've been reading Mark Rosewater's articles for, I feel like, forever.
Yeah.
And I don't remember ever hearing about Extended.
Nobody really liked Extended. Like it was a Pro Tour supported format, so people had to get good at it in the same way that like Block Constructed, which was small standard, was a format that was occasionally played on the Pro Tour, so people had to get good at it. But it's also like it had not a real good middle ground. And I think, in my opinion, when you are designing a format, now that we have had a lot of developments in our understanding of how collectible card games work in practice, you need to have kind of a vision for the format. So you can just say, I want this format to be all the old cards that people like. And that's, I think, a fine viewpoint to have. But I think that explicitly in Magic, the Legacy and Modern have kind of developed a kind of play that is supported. So Legacy is all the oldest cards. It's very, very highly powered. People are going to be playing with basically the same deck. You can keep playing the same deck for most of your life, and occasionally you trade out like one or two cards. But fundamentally, it's a format where basically if your opponent gets to do something, you lose. You know, not completely. But a huge amount of the interaction happens on the stack, and games are just very, very, very lethal. So you're having it play. It's a very controlling format. Basically, you have like extremely degenerate combo decks on one hand and extremely powerful control decks on the other hand, and the like aggro mid-range space kind of doesn't exist.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my question though, was on a long enough timeline, an eternal format just becomes kind of bonkers good. I mean, I remember when I was in high school, it was there like the existence of a one-turn kill existed, right? Like forget Infinite Engine. That was the Black Lotus was the one that gave you like 3 mana or something, and then
Black Lotus Channel Fireball. Yep.
Black Lotus Channel Fireball. Like that was a theoretical possible thing you could do turn one.
Yeah.
And I assume that it's just gotten worse. And that has gotten more reliable.
I mean, there is a turn one kill deck. There are a variety of turn one kill decks, many of which just aren't even particularly good. Right, because the kill just isn't resilient enough to disruption. So there are like legitimate turn one kill decks that you just need to pack disruption for. You need to pack interaction for, and the format has interaction. And the designers, Wizards, kind of has a very hands-off attitude towards Legacy.
It feels like that idea, the and I don't know how accurate this is, but that like common conception. I don't want to say an accurate samurai history, but in like Tarantino samurai history of like where it just there's the staring down.
Yes, that is
once the moment the game starts, it's just one cut and somebody dies.
I mean like that is precisely the way that Legacy play or a lot of Legacy plays out. Is you have two people where they're staring at each other and there's like all this positioning and they're sculpting their hands and they're getting ready to go, and then there's a decisive moment of action, and then the game is probably decided one way or the other. Like not always, but
So on a long enough timeline, that sounds great, right? Like in eternal format, you're going to have this kind of creeping power level that just goes up, and so that's, I mean, great is maybe a strong word, but that's an inevitability. If you just allow all cards, then the 50 best cards out of a random pool will just get increasingly better and better and better and better. So there's a world where I'm just ambushing out, your favorite commanding Vader on turn one. Yeah. Like I'm just going to, cheat that out. And like, I've built a deck to do that. And there we go. Yeah. And that's fine. So then you have to chop it in half where you're like, well, we want more than, current, whatever the current 2 years, 6 sets of Star Wars Unlimited is, but less than everything. So we're going to have, so all that sounds great. The problem is, like you noted, we're not there yet.
No.
Premier, and the Premier is an eternal format. Right?
Yes.
Premier currently encapsulates all sets. Star Wars Unlimited has put out, and will continue to do so for like 5 months. Star Wars Unlimited is currently, we until we get to March, until we have 7 sets, the overlap's there. And so if it's not good in the format, if it's not good in the format in Premiere, then it's not good in Trilogy, right?
No.
Like it's not healthy in Trilogy, because you can't even, I don't think you can legitimately make the argument that it's healthy until until we get to March.
So I am going to make one caveat here, and that is something about the way that the Trilogy format is structured. And because the way that the Trilogy format is structured, where you're bringing 3 decks and then you're banning them, if there was I think the fundamental problem is that the degeneracy is spread among, and I'm using degeneracy here, maybe that's not the best word, but like negative play experiences exist on a couple of different axes. And so because of that, somebody can bring exactly like what they did, where they brought Boba 1, Han 1, and Jango, right?
Yeah.
And there's not enough overlap in the card pool whereby bringing Boba 1. But let's pretend that we're in a universe where like Boba 1 and Jango 1 have a sufficiently large overlap of cards that if I'm choosing to bring Boba 1, I probably won't have the card to support Jango, and vice versa.
Like the problem is that all the bustedness is in yellow. And
yes.
That's we can point to the fact that all of the banned cards are in yellow, and all but one are in yellow villainy.
Yeah.
So that I think we know where the blame for that lies. But I also think the longer the format goes on, right? Like the more answers so I'm one deck runs Waylay and the other deck runs Evil Waylay.
Yeah.
And so, or you split it 2 and 1 or whatever. And
right. I don't think that that's a long-term solution, but like that would be what I would point to as a exhaust valve for the format. And I think that something else that's really important with Eternal formats is what makes Eternal, like these very high-powered formats, fun in Magic at least, is that the interaction keeps up with the threats, where you have very, very, very highly powered threats, but you also have very, very, very inexpensive, strong interaction to stop those threats. And I think that with the card pool as it stands, you have very, very strong threats, but you don't have the strong interaction to kind of keep those strong threats in check. And
so,
yeah.
I mean, regardless of what the specific cards are, think I don't think wait and see is the healthy.
It's not healthy for the format. Yeah, I think that.
Well, and especially when you're launching.
Yes.
Right? Like, it's like, hey, here's a new format. We've announced it. And I mean, admittedly, the cost of announcing a new format is hitting post on StarWarsUnlimited.com.
There's an opportunity cost, right?
Sure. I mean, there's only so many formats they can have. But we had one of the Legends of the Force pre-release. Guardian ran one of their pre-releases using a custom fan format called Alliance, which is 2v2. So, like, people are going to spin up formats, and to that point, I think it goes to show that one of 2 things is true. And I've read every Trilogy post on virtually every Star Wars Unlimited Discord, I'm not as obsessive about following along with Star Wars Unlimited social media as the developers are and the community content team as FFG is, but I'm close. Specifically with Trilogy, I'm very close. And every single community event I've heard discussed, one of 2 things is true. Some stores running a Trilogy night, and they've banned the Premier banned cards. They've solved the problem because Fantasy Flight isn't willing to. And so they're just like, that doesn't sound fun. Or it's a no scrub mentality event. This is a serious competitive event, and then everybody's packing at least 2 of the 3 banned decks. And so either way, whether it's competitive or community, like Fantasy Flight is failing to meet a need that is solvable on the community front. But I absolutely think it was a huge mistake to.
And I think that goes back to like needing to define an idea of the format. And this is where I was going to segue into talking about modern, but I was going on too long, so thank you for cutting me off. But modern,
We can circle back.
yeah,
I
yeah,
love circling back now.
yeah. Modern is kind of this bridge format that's developed in Magic where it's kind of halfway between Legacy, where Legacy is this like extremely dangerous, extremely deadly thing that doesn't resemble the way that sort of standard Magic is played, and Standard, which is the way that standard Magic is played. You have Modern, where the card pool is a lot bigger. It's an eternal format, so things don't rotate out, but you have a whole bunch of the like very early bad stuff banned. Is just not in the format, and then there is to a given value of responsive a band team that is designed to cultivate the format. And the basic idea behind the modern format is it's a brewer's format. They want it to be a format where, because the card pool is so big, you can bring all different kinds of stuff. And as long as there's enough different kinds of stuff that no single kind, and all of the stuff is going to be some level of broken, but as long as there is enough different broken stuff that's going on, then that's roughly okay. Like if there's a single structure, a single like deck archetype or a single card that is warping the game around it, then they take action very quickly to ban that card and for a given value very quickly.
Right. So it's just a question of they set the broken threshold higher.
Right.
And I think that's the problem.
Yes.
Is that again, we only have one broken color in Star Wars Unlimited.
Right.
And so unlocking that doesn't feel great. And you know what? I was thinking, so I took down the Han 1 DJ deck.
Yeah.
And yet in one match just took it down.
Yeah.
And in the other match I took it down once and then I lost to it once. And this is not a fun deck to play.
Right. The problem is that it's a negative play experience. It's not that it's necessarily broke. And I think that, not to. Django is more powerful, but I think that one of the things that made Django get hit with the ban hammer was that it was a negative play experience. Having all of your stuff exhausted is a negative play experience.
Right. So launching your new format with this negative play experience, I think is a mistake.
Yeah.
And I think this goes to show it's really fascinating. So there's a lot of kind of nuance when someone says, I talked to a lot of people who said they're Trilogy fans. I'm a Trilogy fan, but what that means is kind of means different things to different people. I love the idea of Trilogy, but I would be, there's absolutely nothing. One of the things that I think sets Trilogy apart from, say, Modern or whatever, and credit to Ryback Stun. We got to meet him in person at Galactics, which was a delight. He hung out with us. Man, what a champ! Ryback, thank you. He stayed with us in the line for the prize wall, but he didn't want to cut. We were already like 25 minutes into the prize wall line, and he just hung out to chat with us, and then bailed like 4 people from the front of the prize wall line. Absolute respect for
just huge respect
for proper. But it was great to have that. It was a long conversation. One of the things he highlighted that I hadn't really kind of like wrapped my head around is that if Fantasy Flight really kind of commits to this idea of Trilogy as the competitive eternal format.
Yes.
It's not, what separates Magic or Standard from Legacy in Magic or Modern is the card pool.
Yeah.
But the game is fundamentally the same game.
Right.
Like the rules in you bring a deck, they consist of a certain number of cards.
There's a certain sideboard, yada.
Sideboard, like that, it's the same game, it's just a bigger pool. Which is not true for Trilogy.
Yes.
Trilogy, by being and Twin Suns is also eternal.
Yes.
But dear God, I hope it's never competitive.
It
should not be.
I will say, in Twin Suns' defense, it is more incentive aligned. I have been trying to play Commander as a way to kind of get my head around why people love that format, and the fact that Twin Suns is incentive aligned, where like the games don't drag on forever, killing somebody, it ends the game, so you don't have like dead players sitting around. And
there is some
there's
more argument
huge.
for
It's in so many ways strictly better than Commander. Yeah,
but again, I played a lot of Twin Suns game where there is still some compelling talking
Yeah.
The extent to which it's strategic whining. You use that term pejoratively, but
Yeah.
I think there's an argument to be made between strategic whining for dragging the game out
Yeah.
versus strategic whining that helps you win the game quickly and then end the game. And one of those is kind of, with the strategic whining, when it's incentive aligned, is just called diplomacy, right?
It is. It kind of is, right? Like, and this, not to heavily derail this episode, but one of
we
the
do not have a strong through line here.
Yeah, one of the things about strategic whining is that, and I think that they talked about this. I wasn't able to attend the Twin Suns panel, but I talked to some of the people who were on it afterwards. But it's about, to the extent that it's diplomacy, it is a secondary game that is layered on top of the existing game, right? And in fact, the better that you are at the game of SWU, the better you have to be at the diplomacy level game in order.
Yep, and then there's also the added elements of like, what deck do you bring?
Yes.
Whereas like the sweatier the deck, the more you just immediately have a target on your back, and so, and there's that whole balance. Absolutely agreed. The point being is, I don't want it to become. I think we can all agree. I think virtually everybody can agree that we don't want Twin Suns to be a competitive format. There should never be a Twin Suns PQ.
I agree with that. There should never be a Twin Suns PQ. If people want to be extremely sweaty with Twin Suns, that's between them and the people that they play with. But like,
I don't think it can happen, because if you want to be really sweaty with Twin Suns, I challenge you to find 3 other people who also want to. Like, I mean, right?
The world is very large, and there's a lot of sweaty people.
The world is very large.
Yeah.
Yes. But the point is that, so we have Twin Suns is an internal format.
Yeah.
And that's a great format for no ban list, because it lends itself to no ban list. And it's got singletons. It's, like the busted leaders just put a target on your back. They're not that busted. Excuse me. They're not so busted that, you are going to, whatever. You show up with, a Boba Django deck. Immediately people that's essentially minus 5 HP on whatever you're printing.
Minus 5, I think, is undercosting it. I think.
Sure. So Ryback made a fantastic point that there's nuance in making the eternal competitive format.
Yeah.
And there has been an expressed desire that there is some level of competitiveness. Like, how competitive is Trilogy? Is it just a fun kitchen table format? I'm going to just keep. This is a drum I will beat loudly and less frequently than I beat my baton deserves to design a card drum. Is we need a Trilogy PQ.
Yep.
If it's a legitimate competitive one-on-one format, like a Trilogy PQ needs to happen. 2026, one of those 3 sets. Give us one Trilogy PQ. Feel free to set in Portland. That'd be great. But the point being is, like, having it different gives texture. Right.
Yes.
Like, and now you have 2 axes. You have, where is the deck building pool, and also what is the rules of the game.
Yes.
And I hadn't really been thinking about that, because for me, just the notion of Trilogy, forget the Eternal. I would play Trilogy over Premier just in a whatever they're going to call the pool of currently legal, there's got to be a term, and I'm sure there was in some I think it was in the stream where Danny confirmed that rotation is going to happen, but there's a term for the way Star Wars Unlimited is played as a 1v1 50 card 10 card sideboard game, which is kind of called Premier, but then there's also, what is the term for the pool of cards that are currently legal in Premier?
Right.
Those are currently
the Premier card pool as opposed to the Premier rule set. Yes,
the Premier card pool, right. So I would play Trilogy with a Premier card pool in a heartbeat, because for me, the amount... One, I hate sideboards. We covered that when we talked about our alternatives to sideboard deck. And if you think I'm wrong, 1, you're wrong, and 2, I know now, thanks to Vegas, that there are Fantasy Flight game designers in the stable who agree with me. Sideboards are for cowards, and I'm going to die on that hill. You pick your cards and you put them on your felt. You do not get to set, like, setting cards aside because they're not relevant in this match. That's what your resources is for. That's why we have resources. And Trilogy means every deck you put down in front of your opponent is a deck that you have you potentially have to play, and there's no sideboard. So anyways, I would play it in the Premier card pool, but I think Ryback made a really great point that having it be the Eternal format, it makes the argument about like, all right, so we get to July of next year, and so in March suddenly 3 sets rotate out, and it's not just, well, I really like playing my busted cards in Premier. It becomes a very different question of, well, but do I like sideboard, right? Like, 'cause there's going to still be people who do it both ways, right? There's going to be, and it's a question of what's supported. That there's still going to be people who are like, you know what? Let's play Premier, 50 cards plus sideboard. A list is 60 cards, as they say. Let's play our 60-card list versus each other with the full panoply of cards that we can build from. And there's other going to be people like me who are like, let's play Trilogy, but only in the box of what's currently standardly.
So this kind of right now we have because there's only one card pool, just to try and clarify and make sure that I'm understanding your point well. Right now there's only one card pool, sort of. So we'll talk about the 2 card pools. There is the Premier card pool, which includes the existing suspensions and bannings, and there is the Trilogy card pool, which is synonymous roughly with the Premier card pool right now, except for the suspension and bannings. And then, so this is at this layer, and then at this layer we have the Premier way of playing the game, and over here we have the Trilogy way of playing the game, and these are linked into 2 silos. And you have
a quadrant.
Yes, exactly. And in the future, once the Trilogy card pool drifts further out of sync with the Premier card pool, then you think that there's going to be a desire for people to want to play with the Trilogy card pool in a Premier format event, and people
just Eternal, right? Like, I don't think that should be supported, but it's the same way that people do, like when we had Ben on, and he talked about how a Carbonite draft just feels like a very Timmy format. It's all bombs, so the game plays differently. People are always going to want to play that, and that's fine, and I support that. And I would be shocked if there aren't like Star City game 2Ks, any random stores doing 2Ks of just bring your busted stuff. That feels natural, but the idea of like, here's the one fantasy, but the fact that there's a quadrant, card pool versus rule base, and the fact that Fantasy Flight is ostensibly throwing their weight as what they support into 2 different, one for Eternal and a different one for rotating, adds texture, and I agree completely. And I even agree with the theory behind Ryan's comments at Vegas that a broader card pool allows for a higher ceiling. And as he said, there's it's possible that an Eternal card pool has answers to Django, to DJ, and those answers don't necessarily solve the negative play experience, but even if they do, 2, we're not there yet, right?
No.
Like, I feel like I would and I realize like resources are limited, developer and design time is limited.
Sure, but like you could have waited, right? Like I enjoy the Trilogy for it. I'm happy they announced it, but you could have waited until after rotation and then been like, hey, all that stuff that rotated out, you want to play with it? Here's the Trilogy format. Go nuts. Yeah.
They could have. I would rather just ban now and then unban.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I understand that as much as Fantasy Flight won't admit it, and this will shock you, Ned, there's a secondary market.
There's a secondary market, Parker.
and if you ban cards, then that drives down value.
Right.
You don't want to drive down value on people who spend money on cards, blah, blah. And I'm sure there's all these factors, but for me, it's like, let's unban. Like, bring them back in when we've got when we've got 7 sets.
It's a suspended list. They're not even banned. They're just suspended, Parker.
Suspended.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's fantastic phrasing. A suspended list. Bring them back in. And so, anyways, I fundamentally disagree with that. But I will say, having played a ton of Trilogy at Galactics, I want to segue into another point, which is just that I don't have a lot to say here, but the amount of, and this goes to your layer on the layer, but the meta strategy of Trilogy format, I think when we were talking about why I hate sideboards, talking about meta literacy, right?
Yes.
Right now, it solves, I think, a lot of problems. Right now, there is an argument to be made. There are conversations have been had that the meta right now is a little too broad. It's a little too flat in Premiere. The nature of the game currently is that there are so many good decks that it's possible that that's too much of a good thing, because if there's too many decks, you can't
tech for all of them. So like, and so your how well you do in a tournament essentially becomes more random, because whatever deck you bring, well, I guess I just drew the decks that I'm weak against. So like if it's rock, paper, scissors, and you think that you've got like a slightly better scissors than everybody else, maybe you draw more rock, maybe you don't, but that's like a known quantity and you can tech against it. But if there's like
but it's that thing
if there's like a dodecahedron,
you want it to be rock, paper, scissors.
Yes.
It's actually that weird one with like
rock, paper, scissors, Spock, lizard.
Lizard. Exactly right. Yeah, and I think we even talked about this, where it gets so many that if you play against a 50 you're strong against, great. If you play against a 50 you're weak against, it sucks to be you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem. And I think Trilogy really solves that. One, it solves that by virtue of just the fact that, well, the odds that, now you're getting to curate the list, right? Like if you're up against 3 that you're bad at, that's either really bad luck, right? Like that's just the Palpatine going into Sabine, like it happens.
Yeah.
Or, you didn't tech right, you didn't read the meta right or whatever. But I think for me, just thinking about, like, for example, and I think I have an answer, but I want to talk about it another time, but I've been noodling on the idea of, so you win your first game in Trilogy.
Yep.
Right? Do you switch? Now, or sorry, if you lose your first game in Trilogy. If you win your first game, you're obviously switching.
Right. One must, yes.
If you lose your first game in Trilogy, do you switch? Or do you keep playing that deck? And you're still going to have to come back to it. If you switch out, you have to bring it back. But I'm beginning to think through I think there's actually like nuance and strategy to whether you switch or not and when. And that kind of like brain burner where like in a normal premiere match in 55 minutes you're playing 2 or 3 matches, but it's the same 2 decks, whereas you've got to be on top of 3 different decks that you can play, that you can keep in your head, that you can be familiar with. In Trilogy you're up against 3 decks, and there's the switch where like you win, now you got to grab your other deck. And even if you beat them, then they're switching their decks. So you're just getting like a lot more variety. You're seeing a lot more cards. I even told you, I think it's much more positive play experience. You and I, when we did our ban earlier, I said one of the 3 you put down was Mother Talzin. And what I should have done, if I actually cared, was ban your Boba 4 Yellow.
Yeah.
I think that was the deck my Trilogy was weakest against. But I was the most bored of playing Mother Talzin because you have been trading for Galactics.
Yeah.
I'm just done with, like, I don't want to play that deck. I mean, I will in a competitive event.
Sure.
Well, there's nothing wrong with the deck, but you and I have played a lot of you on Mother Talzin.
Yes.
And my desire tonight to do that once or twice more was roll over. So I banned that. Right, and Trilogy affords that. It's a positive play.
Yes,
where you can get into that kind of fun.
I remember. I'm trying to remember which tournament it was, but I was on. This was slightly before the Django ban, and I was on Django Tarkintown, and my opponent looked down when I pulled out the deck, and we had been like chatting and being friendly, and the look on his face, I felt just so bad because he was playing like this slower blue-green controlling list, and well, sorry, guess you lose.
Enjoy your burrito. I think so I think there's the brain burn of just having to keep more decks in your head. There's the brain burn of having to be against more decks. There's the fun of getting to like kind of swap out more stuff. I think it's such a positive. There's so much more strategy there than just here's my 60 card list.
Yeah. Let's go.
On which 10 do I?
Yeah.
Let's go. And it rewards meta literacy. We got to have one Trilogy PQ if it's genuinely a competitive format. And I know that just because 2 people can play competitively doesn't mean it's a true competitive format. And I know that Fantasy Flight is not 100% united internally on how seriously they should take the Trilogy format. And I say take it very seriously.
Yeah.
It is a better format. It's a much better format. For me, though, because then you even get into the fun things. Like I was talking to somebody I played at the Trilogy event, and then also talking to Tyler about set one, the kind of ebb and flow of Tarkin Yellow, right? That especially into Shadows as well, but it's really the rise in Shadows of Tarkin Yellow was a deck that if you weren't prepared for, you got steamrolled.
Yep.
But if you were prepared for, you pack in a little bit of your sideboard and problem solved. Did you have an answer for Lurking Tie Fandom?
Did you have Perilous Position? Did you have Make an Opening? Yeah.
If you have something, great.
Yeah.
If not, and so the deck would have a rise as nobody had answers for it. Then people would pack in a little bit of solutions into their sideboard, and the deck just didn't have answers for the answers and disappeared.
Yeah.
And you would have this kind of bit. And we're kind of in that similar situation, I think, with not quite to the same extreme with Vader 4 Yellow. Vader 4 Yellow has, if you have answers for that level of swarm, you tend to be able to do well. And I think that's why you didn't see that. You saw a reasonable amount of Vader 4 Yellow.
I mean, one made it into top 8, but yeah.
It's and I think it has answers.
Yes.
But the problem is that like your wins come down to, I think that's luck and skill, not trading, but the luck of being able to.
Did you get a grenade strike? Did you get your bombing run? You know, how many Victor 4? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so with Trilogy, the fact that there are no sideboards makes those kind of decks, that there's so much more room for those kind of weird decks, which is maybe goes back to my comment about it's a wide field of randomness.
Yeah.
But you specifically get to pick.
But you have a larger sample size, and they have to be like in order to. So there's a reason why I bring Rex Unity of Purpose as one of my decks, is that it is a deck that when it works amazingly well. And if your opponent has answers for it, it just folds like a wet noodle. Do they have discard? You're in for a sad time. Do they have Sentinel on the ground? Well, maybe you can work your way around it depending on how big the Sentinel is and how they structure their turns. But fundamentally, it is a deck that is does not do well in the kind of competitive environment where people have sideboards, and if it's at all a meta threat, then everybody just texts for it and it immediately dies in the way that Tarkin Yellow does. But I think the Trilogy is exactly the ground where you can play it. And not only can you play it, but it's also not a negative play experience, where if your opponent sees that, again, this is assuming that you are well enough versed in the meta that you know what I'm doing, and also that none of the other things I bring are but so much in this vein, right? But
no, and I think that, I mean, eventually we get to a point that there's right now. I mean, those decks are Tarkin Yellow, which obviously overlaps heavily with Vader 4 Yellow.
Yeah,
we get to a point where, in fact, there are absolutely 3 totally. Your deck options are Rex, Vader 4 Yellow, and a third that is just kind of like weird and hard to deal with if you don't pack the tech. And so then, but again, it's not a negative play experience, because in large part your opponent gets to choose the one that they don't want to play against the most, and it's gone. There's so much more. It is, if you haven't had a chance to play Trilogy yet, and I played against a lot of people at Galactics who had never played before. We introduced Trilogy format to a fair number of players. If you've never played before, it's absolutely it's
a blast.
Rich.
It's a deck built, like, again, what I said about Modern, and that's why I think that Modern is a good parallel, is that it is a brewer's format. It is a format for people who like making decks. You make more decks, you see more decks, you play more decks. You get to attack on like weirder angles that aren't as well supported. And I think to that end, it can be a very strong competitive format. But in order to be a good, strong competitive format, it needs nutrients and it needs love. And the nutrients that it's going to get with time as the things rotate and as the card pool develops. But the love that it needs the care to have somebody being willing to say no when it's acting up. And I'm not quite sure that we're there yet.
Yeah, exactly. This is a format that I think requires a slightly more aggressive, as a format. It's something that requires a slightly more aggressive team to be who this is their thing, and that really goes to show, I think, my passion is for Trilogy, the game
the game mode as opposed to Trilogy the card pool.
Trilogy the card pool, and I'm fine with it. Like, I will happily play. I mean, but again, and we're going to talk a little bit next week about how janky is your community. But like, I would not play in a serious competitive Trilogy event right now because that just sounds miserable. But
you don't love your Boba one. I mean, you get your Boba one green, you get your Boba one yellow, you get your
right. Yeah. Like, it's just going to be, whereas if you even just accept the Premier format, you're going to get weirder things because suddenly Rex feels a little more viable because people aren't quite sure how to deal with it. And, even the obvious answers to something like Rex might be split across two decks. One of the decks has it. One of the decks.
And I only have to win once.
In fact, you only can win once.
Yes.
And so, huge proponent. You're going to hear about it a lot on this channel. This is what I talk about now. Ned and I are joined. The Venn diagram of our interests. Ned is math. The center of the Venn diagram is mildly interesting, and for me, it is Trilogy. And I'm not to discount how much you may enjoy it, Ned, but
I do.
I am planting my flag. I am pitching. I am already have a Google Doc I am working on for what goes into a Trilogy panel. How do I fill 50 minutes of talking about Trilogy? We're at 50 minutes, so clearly we can do it because this is our third time. I thank you, dear listener, for sticking with us. We're not done yet, but thank you for sticking with us because much like The Rise of Skywalker, I'm pretty sure this was our worst of our trilogy of episodes on the Trilogy format.
Damn.
I want to talk briefly about a new topic, new segment. Boom, hard cut.
Smash
very
cut.
Briefly. But I want to show off something that I think might be somewhat unique in the Star Wars Unlimited universe. I'm pretty excited about this. Coming out of Galactics, a lot of people have been showing off things they picked up. You've seen a lot of master sets. People have been putting together really cool collections, things they got off the prize wall, combinations of cards they got from sectors or whatever. And there's a lot of cool stuff. And I want to show off a very small Star Wars Unlimited collection that I've been working on. I'm very excited because I want to talk about the fourth item in the collection that I don't own yet. I collect, and I'm working on a collection of things created by Star Wars Unlimited creators. And I have a little shelf, and I hope to make it a lot bigger. And I'm going to show off 3 items very briefly, and I will talk about them. Dear listener in your car. The first is a book called First Test. It is a graphic novel adapted from a novel by Tamara Pierce. It is illustrated by the writing is adapted by Devin Grayson, but it is illustrated by our own Becca Farrow. Becca Farrow illustrated a bunch of cards. Makes me a little sad, a little nervous. I really like Becca's illustrations, and she hasn't been around in 2025. So, don't know what's going on there. But she had a bunch of cards in the first 2 sets especially, and I loved her art. It always astounded me. And she illustrated this great graphic novel. Not quite my jam. It's a little bit young adult for me, but it's about a young woman named Caladri, who is dealing with kind of an oppressive society. It's got a real great coming of age tale about just being awesome to yourself and getting strong and not letting other people define your own limitations. Illustrated by Becca Farrow, and not something I would have picked up if it were not illustrated by a Star Wars Unlimited illustrator, but I picked it up and I read it and it was quite good. Something I probably would have picked up if I could have found it without it being created by a Star Wars Unlimited creator, but I would not have gone through the effort to find it. This is Not a Place of Honor by John Leo. This is John Leo, one of the designers' book of poetry. I really want to read some of this. There are some really good things in here, and I kind of made the last minute call not to Just because like poetry is powerful and context is everything, and poetry is for everybody. Like Star Wars, poetry is for everybody. Everybody should have. If you don't own a book of poetry, like shame on you. Get like the human soul is richer for having a book of poetry. Doesn't even have to be like an obscure one. Just go get like one of the really popular ones. But like everybody should have a book of poetry on the shelf. You and me making our meandering jokes about Star Wars is not the place to read this. But even if I suspect I have the voice. I could probably do this justice, but the show would not be doing it justice. But there is some incredibly powerful poetry. This one is a small print. I had to hunt this down, but I was able to get this. And in fact, at Galactics, I didn't get a chance to talk to John, which made me sad. I did. Speaking of your Django look of face, he clearly had to get to the designer duels when I like ambushed him. Was like, hey, will you please sign something for me? And I think he was thinking a card or something. But he agreed. He acquiesced. He was very kind. Before he knew what he was signing, he acquiesced. So props to John. And then when I pulled this book out, I do not think that's what he expected to come out of my singles binder was his book of poetry. But he signed it, and that's book number 2 on my collection. Book number 3. This is the current crown jewel. This is a beast. George Lucas, El Mago, by David Busan. I have only read about half of this because it is in Spanish. So I can't strongly recommend this to you if you do not speak Spanish. I lived in Peru for a while. I speak enough Spanish to laboriously get through it. I'm about a little over halfway through. If you like David Busan's artwork, though, buy this book. It is essentially a narrative. It is the history, just kind of not even chronologically, of just George Lucas's and to a lesser extent, like also Steven Spielberg, because they were like such frequent collaborators. So it's got like a chapter on Jurassic Park and so forth. But everything that George Lucas kind of influenced, and it's just I can't even do it. Like I'm a terrible content creator, and I'm sorry. It's just every single page, David Busan illustrations. You've seen his art on Star Wars Unlimited, but it's also like, hey, we've got THX 1138, we've got American
graffiti.
We've got Jurassic. He illustrates like a ton of dinosaurs from Jurassic Park. We've got the Radioland Murders, Land Before Time. Like the influence of George Lucas, as written and as told by David Busan, and every page gorgeously, lovingly illustrated by David Busan. This book, I mean, if you have the money to spare and you don't speak Spanish, like still buy it because it's just so much great, gorgeous artwork. And he really like David Busan has a style, but he also touches on the style of what he is doing. So when he talks about Monkey Island or the Marvel Comics or the Clone Wars, like his style segues kind of is informed by that style. He's doing, I don't know what the graphical term is, but like homage, like he's acknowledging the style that he's attempting to imitate. Absolutely stunning book. High recommend. And I love owning it. I love seeing it on my shelf. It's one of my favorite things to just like pull down and look through because it's such a gorgeous art book. Which brings me to number 4. Number 4 I don't own yet. And the reason why I don't own yet is because I'm holding out for the sequel, which is coming to Kickstarter in like a week, 2 weeks. Axel Hutt, I say our own Axel Hutt, Star Wars Unlimited's own Axel Hutt, is publishing the second printed book of their Angel's Power series. And I really wanted to grab the first one, but you know the ability to grab a twofer. He's kickstarting the second volume, and so the second printed volume, I haven't read it, but I'm desperate to get my hands on it. I will be a day one backer of Axel Hutt's Angel's Power, the Diabolics. It's every Axel posts on Blue Sky pages from the comic. Gorgeously painted. I mean, gorgeously illustrated. Axel's work on Star Wars Unlimited is good, very good. And getting those showcases and those hyperspaces is nice. Seeing full page illustrated comic spreads that are clearly painted with love. Not that Axel doesn't love Star Wars, but that like doing your own thing. You can see
Yeah.
it. And an infinite budget, right? Like you paint it till it's done, as opposed to this is how much money FFG gave me, and I will paint that much card. Like I mean, right? Like
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
like the commons are not getting the same amount of money as the prestiges and the showcases over.
No.
Seeing Axel's work, I cannot wait to back it. There will be a link below to the Kickstarter. You want Star Wars Unlimited to grow. You want to get to that point where they're selling prints and licensing's hard, but you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Like more mature card games have robust art scenes. Let's get there by supporting the artists. So link to Axel's Kickstarter in the comments. That will be purchase number 4. If there is a book, and I'm not counting covers, because if you include covers, actually a lot of Star Wars Unlimited artists have books, but books with interior art by Star Wars Unlimited artists. If any of the other designers or developers or marketing people have a book I don't know about, please get at me in the comments. Ned will tell me about it, and I will go buy it and add it to my collection.
Heck yeah.
And back Axel's Kickstarter.
Yes.
I think that's our episode. That's over. That's an hour. Ned,
Beautiful.
do you have any final thoughts?
I'm going to reiterate, if you are going to PAX West and you are interested in buying a card game about the Polish Constitution of 1791, please show up to my booth during the Indie Night Market. And for the low price of $40, you can get your hands on it.
I have been won over based on the attendance at Ned's panel by the power of shilling. So
it's
Fantasy
remarkable.
Flight, I would like to do the Trilogy panel in Las Vegas in 2026. That's me. Put me in, coach. Thank you, dear listener, for bearing with us. We will talk to you in a few weeks.
Adios.